Rumors have the Houston Rockets interested in not one, but two superstars. Is De'Aaron Fox even considered a superstar? And the Los Angeles Lakers go streaking. That's all ahead today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can start the season with the big return right now on FanDuel. New customers will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Doug Branson, host of the Locked On Hornets podcast, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts. From the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior NBA writer for the Action Network, we've got the great Matt Moore. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, it is, of course, the one, the only. It is Hayes. Matt, Hayes, trade rumors, in my experience, don't tend to get quieter if you continue to lose. And that's the case with Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks right now. After the Bucks dropped a close game to the Charlotte Hornets, we get a report from Mark Stein that has sparked speculation that the Houston Rockets could position themselves as serious contenders to land Giannis, leveraging their young assets, draft capital, and even the influence of Rockets legend Hakeem Olajuwon in that pursuit. Matt, is Houston a realistic destination for Giannis, or is this a Rocket pipe dream? What are you hearing?
So I think the key here is that there's very different conversations depending on whether you're inside or outside of Houston. So people outside of Houston that have spoken with people close to the Rockets have kind of maintained that, like, yeah, they're shopping for a superstar. They want a player they can win now with. And then internally, there's a lot more conversation locally about, no, like, we're going to be very patient with this. We've got such a great young core. We're not going to skip steps. We're not in a hurry. We're going to let this thing develop. And so the question is, like, all right, so which is it? And the answer is probably, it depends on who you talk to. Ime Udoka probably wants a superstar. He's ready to win because coaches get frustrated when they continue to try and develop on a long path. It takes a lot to kind of stick with that long term, and it honestly is hard to keep job security with a young team trying to make those steps forward without a true superstar. From a front office perspective, you're probably looking at more of a long-term plan because it buys you more time to make the team and make yourself look smart. So the question here is, what does Tillman Fertitta, the owner, want? And if he wants a superstar, they're going to be in the market for a superstar. They have a great package they can offer Milwaukee, but it's going to take Giannis coming and actually saying, I want out and I want to go to Houston. That's the only way that conversation even really starts.
Okay, so Hayes, the question there, what does Tillman Fertitta want? What should he want? Should he want a pursuit for a superstar like KD or Giannis, or should he stick with the plan that they have now, all of those young assets, see where that goes?
I mean, I think that they can't go wrong in either way that they decide to go with it because, yeah, typically you need a superstar if you truly want to contend and do so over a long period of time in the NBA. It's just proven true, right? They have a nice young core of players that most of them are locked in. You have some draft picks, so they can make a move for a superstar if and when they need to be. But I think the Houston Rockets, they don't need or should not want to appear desperate. They should want to appear in a position of power to where we don't have to make this move. We're still going to be able to contend in the Western Conference, and you never know. Like Alperen could still take his game another level. Josh Green showing me a lot so far. I mean, Jalen Green showing me a lot so far this season that I didn't expect for him to pick up on from last season. So I think they are in a position of power either way that they decide to go with it. But you do eventually need that superstar. So unless you're looking at your roster and you see somebody who's going to turn into that transcendent superstar, you believe so on this roster, eventually you're going to have to go and obtain them. And every year that goes by, while you have less and less assets and maybe your younger players get exposed a little bit more, that ceiling on them drops a little bit. So they're in a prime position to strike. I just don't think they necessarily have to strike immediately right now, which actually can help them in the long run.
The other problem is their assets are honestly a little too good. Like, you can't trade Amen Thompson right now with how he's playing. He looks amazing on both ends of the floor. You can't trade Tari Eason right now. He looks amazing. He's like really leveled up. Şengün has kind of struggled to start the season. Jalen Green's come back down to earth, but those are the two guys that are going to wind up with the biggest contracts, so teams are going to be more wary of trading for them. You can't trade Reed Shepherd. He's a rookie, barely getting minutes, but he shows great things. Like, they are so stacked with young talent. They're going to be caught between, hey, we could really do something with this young talent and trade for a superstar, or what's in the box? It could be anything, even a superstar. So they're going to have a hard time, I think, balancing that line as they go forward.
Okay, so despite all of these rumors, Locked On Bucks host Justin Garcia is running the numbers on the Locked On Bucks podcast and is confident Milwaukee is on the verge of turning things around. Let's hear from Justin.
If we just look at November as a whole, the Bucks are 3-5, but their defense right now in the month of November, in those 8 games, which is a small sample, but still, is 10th best in the league, and it is less than 1 point per 100 possessions away from the Boston Celtics. Their defense is not the reason why this team is 3-5 in November. Their defense is not the reason they're 4-9 overall. The issues have been offensive, and part of that is no Chris Middleton. Part of that is 3 straight games with no Dame. Part of that is 2 straight games with DeLon Wright as the only point guard that you've had available to you. The offense is where the issue has been, but I think we're all assuming, when they're healthy and when they get this, time together, the pieces that we've seen from young guys, like, I'm not worried about the offense. It's going to be fine. It's the defense. Well, we're starting to see that baseline of the defense has been good enough.
Okay, do you buy it, Hayes? The Bucks defense good enough, and they're prepared to weather the storm until Lillard and Middleton are 100%. Do you buy that?
No, good enough for what? What are they good enough for? No, the Milwaukee Bucks defense is not good enough. I was really surprised to hear that. Like, let's look at the teams that the Milwaukee Bucks beat so far. Philly, when just about everybody was out but Maxey. Utah Jazz, we don't know what's going on in Utah. Toronto, come on now. Detroit Pistons, okay, that's a tough young team that's playing a lot better, but it took you to go to overtime. We have not seen some type of dominant defensive performance. Like, has it improved? Yeah, but it's improved from being in the toilet. Okay, now you're on the toilet seat. So congrats to that. But to say that this defense is not the problem, they still don't play good with up-tempo offenses, especially offenses that barrage from threes, which is where the modern NBA offense is going. No, come on. Is the Milwaukee Bucks defense good enough? No. The answer is no there.
I mean, look, this is why I think it's tough, is because this is why I'm always fascinated when the eye test doesn't match the metrics. Because eye test, I agree with you. I'm like, no, they can't defend at all. But the numbers are the numbers here. Schedule adjusted, they're 10th best on the entire season. That's going to be higher if you filter it down for November. They got the 5th toughest defensive strength of schedule. So even though you're talking about all these teams that they've played, like, a lot of those teams wind up ranking high offensively, which is what's bringing up a lot of those numbers. Now, overall, Justin's referencing their numbers for November. They are 10th overall, just in like raw defensive rating. And so, like, the numbers are saying one thing, the schedule says one thing, and then the eye test says another. One of the reasons that this looks like this is honestly the bench. That's the big problem. I started looking at some numbers this weekend. They're fine with the starters. They're okay. And they're honestly okay when Dame's on the floor, as long as Bobby Portis isn't on the floor with him. And they're okay with Bobby as long as Dame's not on the floor with him. You put Dame and Bobby together, that's what's getting them killed in those bench minutes. Like, that combo cannot work together. If they can solve that, I think that honestly they have the upside here. The question I think for Milwaukee is just like, look, there may be some signs that they could use. They're just running out of time. If they don't turn it around and find some wins, the vibes get so bad, it necessitates change. Like, there's only so far down. There is a point of no return to the depths you will sink, and Milwaukee's got to manage that, and they got to do it pretty quick.
And it's interesting to note in that same Stein report on the Giannis rumors, he was also mentioning that the Bucks might be interested in using the 2031 pick, I think the next first round pick that they have, in an effort to acquire one more perimeter defender. So they obviously feel the same as Matt, that there are still some issues there. Okay, coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast, 5-game winning streaks are so in right now. The Lakers, Magic, Rockets are all on one. Who will be the last to stand? That's ahead on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of the Locked On NBA podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. With everything going on in life, it's easy to forget to say thank you, not just to the people around us, but also to ourselves. This month, as we focus on gratitude, I want to take a moment to appreciate the effort that we all put in for ourselves every day. Life is chaotic, and simply doing our best deserves a little recognition. So while you're thanking those special people in your life, don't forget to send a little appreciation your own way. If you've ever thought about therapy, it can be a great way to build the positive coping skills that you need, set boundaries, and just generally feel more in control of your life. Therapy isn't only for those dealing with major challenges, it's for anyone who wants to grow and improve. BetterHelp makes starting therapy simple. It's entirely online, designed to fit your schedule, and flexible enough to meet your needs. You just fill out a quick questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time. No extra charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free and daily newsletter, so go ahead and make that your first read of the day. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Okay, I mentioned lots of 5-game winning streaks going on right now, and the Lakers are on one as well. Let's take a listen to the latest episode of the Locked On Lakers podcast to see what is behind the streak.
There's a lot about what is happening that does feel sustainable, starting with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Like, I see no reason, short of injuries, knock on everything you can find, that Anthony Davis can't play like this for the rest of the season. I see no reason why LeBron is going to have some sort of massive drop-off with, got to account for back-to-backs, and some missed games and stuff like that. But the level of play from those guys, to me, seems sustainable, and it is the single most important factor in whether or not the Lakers can continue to compete at a high level. Do they have 2 of the 10 best players in the NBA, or guys who can play like that on a night-to-night basis? So far, the answer to that question is, yeah, they do.
Okay, Hayes, are the Lakers as good as their 5-game winning streak and 9-4 record would lead you to believe?
I went back and forth on this before we started today, what my answer is going to be here. And I'm going to say yes. Surprisingly enough, I'm going to say yes. I think that the play of Anthony Davis and LeBron James, of course, there's going to be some down periods. They're going to go through a period of losing a couple of games, 3 games in a row or something like that. But I think for the most part, the Lakers are what their record says that they are. I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. I still think that they need to try to move D'Angelo Russell to bring in some added depth and some things that they need on that team. But overall, I'm believing right now. I'm buying stock in Anthony Davis. As long as he stays healthy, I'm going to believe in this team. And a big part of this as well is J.J. Redick's coaching. I think J.J. Redick has done such a good job coaching this team and balancing the personalities and everything that it makes me believe in the Lakers probably more than what I've had in quite a bit, to be honest with you.
I was really high on them in preseason, and so I want to be like, aha, I was right. Yeah, no, there's a lot of reason to think this is fraudulent. They are a top 4 half-court offense. They are 16th in half-court defense. They have the 4th worst transition defense. Do you know who has the best on-court net rating for this team? What player are they winning by the most with? That's the best way to put that in just simple terms. It's D'Angelo Russell. Anybody want to buy that? Anybody want stock in that one? Because I don't. Their defense is way better with D'Angelo Russell on the floor. Anybody want to buy that? Because I don't. So the Dalton Connect has been great for them. There are pieces there. I do agree with Hayes. I think the point about Redick is important here. Like, they have a better offense because Redick has constructed a better offensive scheme and strategy. But if they're not going to be elite defensively, this team cannot be that good. Like, this team is built to be a defensive monster. And if they're not going to get there, they're not going to be a good enough offense to compete with when Indiana finally gets rolling. Boston, the Cavs, they're not going to be this elite offense. If you can't be elite in one category, you have to be great in both. And I don't think the Lakers right now have proven they can do that. So I'll say I'm not buying it yet.
It seems like they still have a lot of work to do to get into contender mode, but they're at least weathering the storm, which I think is, they could have gone the other way. They could be on a 5-game losing streak right now.
But what storm? Davis and
the early start was not good. I mean, we were on this show talking about, things looked very down for the Lakers to begin the season.
Anthony Davis hasn't had a hangnail yet. Like, once we start getting into the season, if they get the same injury luck that they had last year, then they can weather it, right? Because even if they miss some role players, which is really rough for them last year. But if Davis and LeBron stay healthy, but the assumption from Locked On Lakers that that's going to happen, that's where I start to be like, let's see, let's see before we count it.
Well, and on that same episode, Hayes, they were discussing that very topic, that injuries are a factor with every single team. It's seemingly in the NBA, that no one is immune from the injury bug this season. And they were lamenting that the Lakers were a little bit unfairly maligned for beating some teams that were facing some injuries while being relatively healthy themselves. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I can buy that. I think when it comes down to it, like, health is such an unpredictable thing, especially for this Lakers team, that it's dangerous to bet on Anthony Davis to be healthy. And yeah, you want to take advantage of teams and win against teams when they're missing their best players. Like, that's just what you have to do. You have to, if you have an advantage over a team, you have to take advantage of it. You have to actually win those games. But to Matt's point, like, the moment Anthony Davis sneezes too hard, he may miss 5 games.
Yeah,
the Lakers not the only.
Here's my little violin
Tiny
for Locked On
violin.
Lakers. There we go.
Good.
They could just play the world's smallest violin crying a sad, sad song for them. But look, I will say this. This is how you build a really great regular season record. You got to beat the bad teams, and the Lakers are doing that. So you take the wins wherever you can get it. You can't have like a brilliant strength of schedule in the NBA regular season. It's too messy.
Okay, the Lakers not the only ones streaking right now. The Magic and the Rockets are both taking their 5-game winning streaks on the road tonight. Orlando against Phoenix, and then Houston against Milwaukee. We just talked about the trade rumors there, so interesting storylines in that matchup. Matt, whose streak stays alive tonight, the Magic or Rockets?
I'll take Houston, and the reason is this is a crazy stat. The home team in Magic games, whether it's the Magic at home or their opponent at home, has won the last 14 straight Magic games, including the playoffs.
Wow.
So when the Magic are home, they're unbeatable. When they're on the road, they can't win at all. 17 of the last 20 going back to last March. That trend stays accurate. So Orlando's on the road versus Phoenix tonight. Phoenix is banged up. Second night of a back-to-back. It's a rough spot. But because of that trend, I'll say Houston. I think both of them are those streaks are ending tonight, though. I think the Bucks are actually going to get this win as well, and the conversation starts to shift on them. I think both streaks end tonight.
Hayes.
I don't think either one of the streaks end today. I think the Houston Rockets, we're betting on the Milwaukee Bucks. I as you can tell, I'm not high on the Milwaukee Bucks at all. I think these streaks stay alive for right now. If I'm going to say which one is going to go keep the streak alive the longest, I'm going to say the Houston Rockets are just so good and sound defensively, and their length gives people so much problem. I'll probably say the Houston Rockets.
Okay, moving on. Some more news out of the NBA. Charlotte star point guard LaMelo Ball fined $100,000 by the NBA for offensive and derogatory comments in a post-game interview on Saturday. Here's my co-host on Locked On Hornets, Walker Mill, with his take.
The $100,000, let's be clear, that is a hefty fine. That is a lot of money towards the anti-gay slur that he uttered after that win against Milwaukee. And I have to imagine that some of this takes place because LaMelo was also so carefree during other interviews where he's cursed multiple times. I at least I have to imagine that was baked into consideration. The term itself, I know that the NBA has a zero tolerance policy on it. So this is something that the NBA wants to come down hard on to make sure that we don't see this again. They want to do their best to deter this type of behavior. And I also completely understand that the NBA does this and even has to do this because this is an association that embraces everyone. They have Pride celebration. They sell the t-shirts. They put on the graphics. They want to make sure that you are not only welcome, but embraced as a member of the NBA community. And so this is why you get this kind of fine when you say something like this.
On a live stream with Kai Sinnott, Andre Iguodala, the head of the Players Association, said that they plan to fight that fine, which they view as excessive. Is the NBA PA right, or did the NBA get this fine right, Matt?
This is ridiculous, and it's indicative of an ongoing problem that no one's going to talk about as the NBA Players Association tries to wash this away. This is an ongoing issue. Nikola Jokic dropped the same phrase several years ago, but like think about it. Think of the phrasing here. Let's take out the word homophobic, right? Let's just drop this. Fined $100,000 for use of a slur. Does that sound out of bounds? Like, what are we talking about here? There are consequences to the language that you use, and the fact that that the NBPA wants to try and fight this is absolutely absurd, and it's indicative of an ongoing problem with that organization's attitude towards these kind of issues, and they need to clean that up immediately.
I'm completely in line with Matt here. I think that the NBAPA is out of bounds here. Like the NBA is right for this fine. I think that they have been very clear on this type of terminology and language used, and they have to come down hard on it because they want to get this part out the game of basketball, out of being associated with the NBA. They want to get it out of there, and so you're gonna get harsh fines in that case.
This shows a very important distinction between NBA corporate culture and NBA locker room culture. And that disconnect is not something that we talk about enough.
Right, but I don't think that players can feign ignorance on this because the NBA has had high-profile campaigns, advertising campaigns to curb this behavior, not only in the NBA, but also on basketball courts everywhere in America. And you mentioned the fine for Nikola Jokic. Cam Thomas got dinged for this as well. Not this particular phrase, but Anthony Edwards also fined for similar comments online. And so, like, these players can't be, if they are unaware, it's their own fault. So definitely, with all of these punishments, I always think like they're only as useful as their ability to deter further conduct. And if you look at the ones for Jokic and Thomas and so on and so forth, it's still not out of the game. So I think the punishments have to continue to increase until it is. Okay, let us know what you think on YouTube in the comments section or on our community page. Moving on, coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast, we're going to talk about De'Aaron Fox, star or superstar. He just did something that only two other players in NBA history have done, and those players, Kobe Bryant and Wilt Chamberlain. We'll tell you what it is, and if he's a star or superstar. I'll ask Matt and Hayes coming up on the Locked On NBA podcast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers are going to bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And it's the same place where you place your bets, so it's all convenient. And if you want to check out the two streaks that we were talking about in the last segment, right now the Magic are 3.5-point favorites over the Suns, and the Rockets actually underdogs against the Bucks. So they're right in line with what Matt was thinking there. Bucks trying to get the win, a much-needed win. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. There's a free daily Locked On podcast for your favorite NBA team. Search your favorite podcast app for Locked On and your favorite team today. Kings guard De'Aaron Fox notched the first 60-point game of the season, but it's his 2-game scoring total that has Locked On Kings Matt George in disbelief. Let's hear from him.
109 points in 2 games. He's only the third player ever, and I mean ever, to do that. The 2 guys that he joins, Kobe Bryant and Wilt Chamberlain. De'Aaron Fox has done something that LeBron James has never done. Michael Jordan has never done. All that Steph Curry has ever done. All the phenomenal scores that this league has seen over the last 20, 30 years, none of them, other than Kobe Bryant and Wilt Chamberlain, have done what De'Aaron Fox has done over these last 2 games. Can you believe there are actually people on this planet that think that De'Aaron Fox isn't a star? They really exist.
Matt George is the best, folks. Do they exist? Do they exist on this show? Are either of you willing to go out on the branch that De'Aaron Fox has not earned the star label. Matt, are you willing to do that?
I think he's absolutely a star, and he's the best player on the Kings. I'm glad maybe people will finally realize that instead of pointing to Sabonis. But the problem here is like the superstar distinction, right? And superstar has a lot more to do with like your notoriety and your household name value. Like a good way to think about superstars is if casual NBA fans or if general sports fans know who you are. And those folks usually still do not know who De'Aaron Fox is. And part of that, like this is illustrative of the problem with the NBA's marketing, that the Lakers are on TV a million times. They know who D'Angelo Russell is and don't know who De'Aaron Fox is. Not to pick on D'Lo here. Like they know who Austin Reeves is and they don't know who De'Aaron Fox is. Like that's a problem. You should be showcasing these kind of talents. Fox has been doing this for years. And he's amazing on the defensive end, too. And he's clutch. That game against the Wolves, even though it was a loss, is one of the best performances I have seen. For all the talk about the 2-game thing, that's a franchise record for the Kings. Kings have been around a minute, and he's got the franchise record for scoring. It's a shame that it's impossible for De'Aaron to reach superstar status until they've won enough in the playoffs to force their way into the national conversation, because the NBA still struggles with properly marketing all of its teams.
We are aligned once again. De'Aaron Fox, 6 straight seasons of over 20 points per game. Like you said, one of the best clutch players, and he's one of the, take all the stats away, De'Aaron Fox is one of the most entertaining basketball players to watch in the NBA right now. But you have to have league pass, or you have to be a basketball nerd to be able to see them normally. And yeah, it's a problem that the NBA has. Like De'Aaron Fox is a star in this league. I'm not willing to say superstar yet, but he is absolutely a star in this league. Him and Sabonis are one of the best 1-2 punches in the NBA, in my opinion. And not a lot of people know them and talk about them unless you're having conversations with people who are just huge sports fans. Like, And it is a problem with this league. But De'Aaron Fox, his play, what he puts out there on the court, how he steps up in the clutch, all these type of things are things I love about basketball. And I think you could make a superstar in De'Aaron Fox easily because he is so entertaining to watch.
Okay, I'll push back a little bit. Are we not talking about De'Aaron Fox because the Kings, I mean, they're not stellar. They're not 15-0. I mean, if they were doing what the Cavaliers were doing, wouldn't we be talking about De'Aaron Fox more, just like we're talking about Donovan Mitchell and all of the cast of characters that Cleveland is putting out there more?
The Los Angeles Lakers have been in the play-in tournament the last 2 seasons.
Oh, look, I mean, LA is LA. LA has always been LA. I mean, that's, but I think we'd be talking about De'Aaron Fox more. So I guess my question is, like, what's going on in Sacramento? If De'Aaron Fox is playing this well, playing at a possible superstar level, what's going on in Sacramento that's preventing them from being more competitive in the West right now?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think they're starting to find their groove. We'll see if they can actually put some wins together. I do think they've been inconsistent. I think they have trouble. I think they have 2 different problems, which is Sabonis struggles, I think, in big game environments. And I think Fox has had issues with like the night-to-night consistency. And maybe that's like, if you want to make the argument against a superstar case, that's probably it, is that Fox's great games are amazing and his average game is pretty good. And if you want to be a superstar, it's got to be amazing every single night.
Well, we're going to talk about the Cavaliers more because they are 15-0, and we almost talked about them today, but then we saw that schedule and said, ooh, that Celtics matchup, that's going to be too tasty. We got to dig into it tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe to the Locked On NBA podcast so you get that episode tomorrow. Before we get out of here, though, speaking of players putting themselves in elite company, I mean, James Harden was already there, but he just jumped Ray Allen for second all-time on the three-pointers made list over the weekend. Hayes, what does this new milestone do for you when it comes to placing Harden in context with other NBA greats?
For me personally, nothing. I'm not a James Harden guy at all. I'm good. I mean, shouts out to him for the career he's had. He's had a great career, but he fails when the lights are on. In the biggest moments, James Harden has always failed. And oh, by the way, what franchise does he play for? The Clippers deserve nothing.
I forgot.
We got to get a drop here with like a check mark for
all
every
right,
time.
I'm on it.
It is amazing that it's been, I mean, we've been doing this show for a month now and Hayes has not missed a day. So I
want to get a drop, but I also want to get a graphic of Clippy. You remember Clippy, the guy from the Microsoft Word? He's just going to jump on and say, did you just hate on the Clippers?
Amazing. I thought it was interesting actually from Harden last night was he gave credit to OKC. And not a lot of those guys have kind of like taken a lot to like credit OKC for various reasons. So it was cool to hear him shout out Russ and that organization for like helping him develop into the player that he is. Look, Ray Allen's always going to be a better shooter to me because of what the if we adjust for era, Ray was not only so good from an efficiency but a volume standpoint, and Harden was a lot more about just sheer volume. But that step back was killer. Like, it really was difficult to stop. And yeah, the playoff struggles were there, but if you go back through, like, Harden had a lot of really good games. He just didn't have good enough games. And I think we can have a balance of understanding that Harden is still one of the toughest offensive players that we have really honestly ever seen, and also couch that with he wasn't able to translate that into the biggest moments, and that does hold him back from that all-time consideration. But I will always kind of look back at Harden's ability to lull defenders to sleep with what I used to call the narco dribble, because it would just absolutely put you to sleep, and then hit that step back. His mechanics on that are among the best you're ever going to see.
All right, well, James Harden sits behind only one man, Steph Curry, on that three-pointers made list, who has 3,782 threes. When asked if he thinks he can pass him, Harden said, quote, "I'm one of the most confident guys that we have in this league, but no, I probably won't catch Steph. I don't think anybody will. He can shoot the bleep out of the ball."
My thing there is I've won this a lot. Hayes, do you think anybody will ever, like, the future is a long time, hopefully. Do you think anyone will ever catch Steph? Because I don't think anyone, for an infinite timeline, I don't think anybody's ever catching Steph.
I just don't see it. I don't see how it could happen. Like somebody would have to come into the league with what Steph Curry's been able to do and basically stay healthy for their whole career to even have a hope. And even then, like, I think there's some records that just are probably never going to be surpassed. And I think Steph is one of those guys.
I think one of the factors you have to throw in there is, will the NBA at some point make some adjustments to sort of realign offenses in the NBA and maybe take some of the priority away from the three-point shot or balance it somehow? So unknown factors there. What I do know is that James Harden and the LA Clippers are going to face off against Steph tonight. That's going to be a fantastic matchup. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NBA so you can get Locked On NBA Game Time, which recaps every single game, every single night. You definitely want to check it out. If you like what you heard today, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other, and we'll see you right back here on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On NBA podcast.